Hey everybody, it is time again for another roundtable here at CineFix. Now we got everybody in the same room to talk about all the stuff. So let's jump right into it. And Christina, what are we talking about first?
Well, apparently they're making another movie based on a Disneyland ride, which has gone moderately badly to well for them in the past, but this time they're making it out of Small World, which seems like an odd choice given that Small World is, by definition, the least conflicty.
It's a ride about how everything's okay.
Basically, it's the ride with the least potential for dramatic tension in all of Disneyland.
That's why nobody goes on it.
No, you'd be better off making like.
Is that why you go on rides at Disneyland for the dramatic tension?
You'd be better off making a ride out of the Mark Twain riverboat. Like,
right. Because there's Mark Twain.
Yeah, and there'd be dancing, and yeah, you'd be.
Well, they're also slated to make Matterhorn and Space Mountain.
Space Mountain, I bet, is going to be rad.
Me too.
Space Mountain is a great ride. I just rode that again recently, and it's so cool.
It's so cool.
Does Space Mountain, like, will adding an actual story onto Space Mountain kind of diminish the imagination that you...
It's a small world. The thing about it is just that stupid song that gets stuck in your head and stays there forever. I'm not feeling
No.
But
not get copyright by.
I remember when I went to Disney World with my family when I was a little kid, and like it was like the park was about to close. And we're like, oh, quick, let's go do It's a Small World. And there's nothing more terrifying than riding in empty cars going through there as all those herky-jerky animatronic kids sing in your face. And I have these repetitive nightmares about that. A horror movie would be good. I mean, what happens to the animatronic little children puppet monkeys when the park closes at night? I could dig.
So what's the better alternative? Like who here can pitch a better ride that they should have done? Like
I said Mark Twain Riverboat.
Space Mountain, literally every single other ride.
However, people goofed on Pirates of the Caribbean being turned into a movie when that was first announced. Everyone thought it would be stupid.
I thought this is so stupid, and it's done well.
It's done well. The first one.
I think Lego Movie has proved that like it's just execution. Like you can take anything and make a good movie out of it.
Like the teacups. They should make a movie out of that Star Wars ride, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Or the giant turkey legs. That's a movie.
9 p.m. Fireworks, the movie.
Well, Brad Bird is also already doing Tomorrowland, which is
Right.
a movie about the whole section of Disneyland,
Right.
right? So, I mean, they're either gonna need to come up with new rides or stop making rides about movies.
The Frozen ride at Disneyland is just like the hellish nightmare. It's like American Girl Place on acid. I don't know if you've been there recently, but it's horrific. There's like a 5-hour line to get on that thing.
Spent a lot of time at Disneyland.
Hanging out in Disneyland.
Can I just say that we've spent more time talking about it than Disney has?
Yes, I agree.
Oh, yeah.
And
The meeting, there was this many people in a meeting at Disney, and they said, "It's a Small World movie?" And nobody said no. Nobody said yes, but nobody said no.
No one looked up from
So
their
now
phones.
it's all right. Well, in the vein of movies that don't need to get made at all, they're making a Barbie movie also.
Sony's making it. That's all I have to say.
Sony's made great decisions in the last.
So they're making a live-action Barbie movie. Sony's doing it. I don't think it needs to be made. It's a $3 billion franchise already. Like a year, it makes that much money. Why are we making this movie yet again?
But isn't that answering your question?
Because human beings like money.
$4 billion sounds better than $3 billion.
We've got plenty of money. Let's not make this movie. That's not how capitalism works, my friend.
The only thing surprising to me about this is that it took this long for them
Right.
to make.
Does anybody remember Life Size, the Lindsay Lohan movie? Nope. No one? Nothing?
Just you. Who's Lindsay Lohan?
I think the biggest question is, are they going to keep this actress's body proportions accurate to the doll itself?
Will the actors be required to remove their genitalia before being in the film? That's what I
There's
want.
this one part where everyone pulls down their pants and they're like, "We've got the same."
To be fair, like that was like a funny part in Toy Story 3 when like Barbie and Ken had that little like sort of side story.
Yeah, absolutely. But because it was cheeky and we could enjoy it.
Straight, like, it's never been a movie, it's always been a toy. I think Battleship started that.
And Barbie is a little bit more like Battleship in that it doesn't have as much.
That's an interesting statement.
In that it doesn't have as much built-in narrative.
But
Like,
neither did Legos.
Yeah, well, the point of Barbie and Legos is here's a toy, your child can make up their own story.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what was the story inherent in Legos? Like Legos was about
Build
like
your own
builders and imagination and you know.
And I think they could theoretically pull off a very decent Barbie movie. I was never into Barbies. I played with my brother's G.I. Joes. I played house with my brother's G.I. Joes.
I would like to point out, if you guys haven't seen this, Todd Haynes, the filmmaker, made this great his Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story. You can see it on YouTube.
Yes.
He used all Barbie dolls, and he used the actual Carpenter music. They sued the heck out of him. This is a film that will put starch in your socks. But this is an incredible, incredible film. As Karen Carpenter, her eating disorder eats her, the dolls change, and it's really dark and disturbing.
I watched that movie. So it was like a snuff film, right? Like people passed it around my high school on VHS because it was banned everywhere and it was like shut down and illegal.
Also, I just think it's worth on this topic. Let's just go look at that picture of the girl from Russia who made herself into Barbie. Like
That's
just for fun.
That
See a
to
picture
me,
of that.
that's the Barbie doll movie I would make, right?
Yeah.
Is the one of like watching this woman transition from a normal person to like turning herself into like a plastic doll.
Yeah,
I think so. Either way, I feel like the verdict is like with both Small World and Barbie, like they need to be horror films for us to enjoy them.
One thing that Sony is doing that doesn't need to be, I think they also are doing Masters of the Universe, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, let's do that. Let's skip right to
The first Masters of the Universe was great, where they rode around in a big pink Cadillac together. Oh, it was awesome.
Courtney Cox was there.
whole
Frank
night out.
Langella actually had an interview not too long ago where he was like, Skeletor was my favorite role that I've ever played.
I mean,
He-Man.
Great.
Masters of the Universe is He-Man and
He-Man,
She-Ra,
yeah.
who are
Yeah.
physically brother and sister, but spiritually not, so they can sleep with each other.
I don't think that was part of it.
I don't know that the cartoon ever got into that.
No, it's the other way around. No. I looked this up once.
I looked this up.
He-Man and She-Ra, the peep are possessed. They're possessed by those bodies are possessed by He-Man and She-Ra, and
Prince, what's his name, and Princess, what's her name?
right. So
Yeah.
they're married, or they're.
I think that's enough.
But they're.
I'm just seeing Clint's eyes, the trying to jump in to find a cut point to get to the next thing.
If I can just get everybody to be quiet for just a frame, I can lift this whole thing out.
We're gonna get to incest later. I'll hold it in. I'll hold in the incest.
Before we get to incest, though, let's.
If you're gonna cut that out, that might be a weird transition.
Yeah, no, there's no segue here. There's no segue here. But let's talk about something that we all probably are on, that is more likely to be for us as viewers anyway, and that's Mitch Hurwitz's deal at Netflix.
Yeah, I gotta level with you guys. I don't give a shit about It's a Small World of Barbie, but this I like.
Let's rap about this.
Let's rap talk about Mitch Hurwitz's new multi-year deal with Netflix. As we know, Arrested Development is resurrected on Netflix. However people feel about those particular episodes in that season of the show, it definitely was Netflix's sort of coming out as a viable provider of original content. So building on that, now Hurwitz is back with them to executive produce, creatively direct a whole bunch of new projects. It's sort of very unclear because this was just announced. We're not exactly sure what they have in mind, but we know it's going to be jokes on jokes on jokes.
It's funny
So,
because
it should be cool.
the fact that it was such an accident that Arrested Development was ever on Fox. I have a friend who wrote for King of the Hill for a long time, and the thing that he said was they hate shows that win awards there because it forces them to keep it on the air even though it's not making tons of money, and they hated that show from day one. And then the fact that now there is a place for stuff like that.
Yeah.
The way the landscape, everyone had lost hope. Reality TV had taken everything over, and everybody had lost hope, and then it changed.
Right.
And it's such a wonderful development. Who knows if he'll pull it off?
Arrested Development is not part of this package
Indeed,
of
I
deals.
just
It's
mean
conspicuously
it's-
absent from being mentioned in terms of the Unicorn, the movie that everyone's heard about for years, as well as another season.
I mean, those types of creators, that type of work, the people who will go out on those branches, and that the people with the money are allowing them to dance out on those branches.
I mean, the multi-year deal thing is something that is an established thing, and that Netflix hasn't. It's something that the networks have done before, the studios have done before, and sometimes, like, let's be honest, sometimes those things lead to someone getting paid for 2 or 3 or 4 years and nothing comes out of it.
It happens all the time. People get an office on the lot and they don't do anything.
And they don't do anything. And it's not that they don't do anything. I mean, they come up with a lot
they
of...
don't do anything. So it's the best job in Hollywood.
But there's there's people who are very creative people who come up with a lot of great ideas, and the network just never likes them. Like, they're like, oh, you made this one great thing, so you will therefore come up with other great stories. And they do, they just don't fit the brand of the network, or the network doesn't think they're marketable.
I mean, isn't the bigger story here that Netflix is acting more and more like a regular
There's a double-edged sword here.
Outside of Arrested Development, like, Mitch Hurwitz hasn't really had a great show. Like, Running Wild was okay at best. Sit Down, Shut Up was okay at best. Like...
I think there's a weird little double-edged sword here, because it's great to see that Netflix, as a content creator, is sort of doing a more sort of traditional model of, like, let's get talent and let's lock them up, and they're working for us for this set amount of time, and that's what's worked for networks for a long time. But then also you're like, come on, man, don't be a network.
Right.
You know, like, because that's what's so great about Netflix. So if they're leaning more towards a traditional model, like, hopefully that doesn't mean that they're going to have, their fingers in everything, and they're going to be more like Fox.
That being said, they have so far in their original programming
Good track record.
They have, in their programming strategy, they not only have a good track record, but they have a reputation now for renewing shows that they're passionate about creatively, whether or not, because we don't know the numbers, right?
Yeah, and technically we don't know their track record.
We don't know their track record. Their track record could be absolutely terrible, but we know enough, at least in the social conversation, that, like, House of Cards was gigantic. At most people that I interact with, I've watched or expressed interest to watch House of Cards. But then Hemlock.
To be fair, your friends are only from Gaffney, South Carolina, so that might not be.
But then something like Hemlock Grove, it's not a gigantic part of the conversation online. It hasn't gotten huge critical acclaim. It hasn't gotten all this attention, but it's got a second season.
And that old breaking the habit of giving a show 2 episodes and then dumping it is such a horrible...
That model definitely has that going for it, because when they order a show, they order 13 episodes and they put the whole thing up, and then everybody gets a complete arc of that story.
Kevin Spacey, when he made that speech in Australia about that, and he's talking about how we didn't have to load up the pilot with all this. Here's I'm explaining explaining this whole world, and here's a stupid cliffhanger to make you come back next week. He said we had a whole season to let everything develop, and it let them tell the story as opposed to cramming it full of
Which is a great model, and we're all better off for it. It's just a slippery slope.
It is.
It really is. Like, I just hope that they stick with that, because more and more you see people that just don't have cable anymore.
That's another announcement though that came out this week, is that Amazon Instant is licensing a lot of the older HBO shows. So it's going to be sort of like an interesting test to see if, as Netflix continues to pursue this original content model, does that put them ahead of these other people who are just sort of more licensing?
Yeah.
At some point, I feel like the establishment is going to want some sort of metric measure out of them. And I understand why they haven't given ratings, right? Like, ratings in the Netflix world don't make sense, because it's a comparative model, and it's a model based on, like, how many people tuned in at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Right. Whereas, like, House of Cards was up a whole year before Orange is the New Black. So do you compare Orange is the New Black to House of Cards, and when do you do that? Do you wait till they're both at their year mark?
Do they have to supply those metrics? Because the whole point of those metrics is to bring in advertisers, and they don't have to bring in advertisers.
They just have to bring in new subscribers. Yeah. Okay.
So what's happening is hopefully all of this thing with the Amazon Prime thing and with the Netflix thing, hopefully we're on our way out, to getting cable providers sort of out of there, because man, do they stick it to you. Speaking of that, Game of Thrones this week, huh?
Wait, no spoilers. I have to catch up on like 4 seasons.
Oh, do you need to leave?
Yeah, you should.
This is a big spoiler.
This is a gigantic spoiler moment. You should leave if you haven't seen the last episode.
Which is why the incest segue was way better.
I was never here.
The incest segue was way better, but we wanted to get the
Right.
spoiler alert out there.
You have to.
Yeah, everybody scooch in. So, Game of Thrones, last episode of Game of Thrones. I can't remember. Oh no. Well, Grant, real sorry.
We're sorry.
So obviously there was a very controversial scene where Jaime Lannister rapes Cersei in front of Joffrey's dead body.
Kind of on and next to and under.
I don't know that it was on.
It was on for a little bit. Like there was some making out.
There was a lean kind of thing.
Okay, so
And
the point is that yes, it was on or about Joffrey's dead body.
Yes.
So, for people who have read the books, this is not quite how this went down in the books.
It did happen.
It did happen in the books. There was sex on or about
She just
Joffrey's
wasn't
dead
saying
body.
no
And she,
the whole time.
She said no in the books, and then it turned to yes, which is also a problematic trope. No, don't touch me. Oh, in the books, though, not only is it next to her son's dead body, she's also on her period. So there's a lot of reasons to say no that aren't just you're raping me.
The debate online is all about was it a rape or was it not a rape? Because if it's a rape, we can no longer ever like Jaime Lannister. They've ruined Jaime Lannister, the character, which I had started to sympathize with. And that, to me, is the most f***ed up partial conversation because, okay, you were sympathizing, you got over the fact that he got caught by an 8-year-old boy and he pushed him out a window.
Yeah, that was the first part that we should stop empathizing.
Stop
with this character.
empathizing. Why is the Game of Thrones is there are stories in the world about heroes and villains where those lines are black and white, and those stories are great and those stories are meaningful. But Game of Thrones is not and was never meant to be that story. Every single character does things in those books that is absolutely deplorable.
I guess you could say the lines aren't so stark.
He was waiting for that. But that world is one
Drop it,
where
my
like.
flash.
So here, let me walk. I have 3 or 4 problems with how it went down in the show. One is that the producers came out and said, "Oh, that wasn't a rape. It was some weird power dynamic that they have that's pre-existing in their relationship." And I don't no. Because if there's a woman on the floor saying no with a man on top, that is rape. The books, yes. The books, it was weird and twisted and not. It's in that debatable rape, not problematic trope of no, yes. In the show, it just cuts on the no, which I think is a
There's like
obvious.
whipping garments.
Yeah.
But what if it cuts back on the yes?
I will say that my wife hasn't read the books, and there was that thing they did, the silly cutaway thing where she's holding on to like the funeral shroud at the very end, and my wife fully expected her to pull and their son to roll over on top of
I was rooting for that same thing.
kind of a missed comedic moment, but she said that, and I thought, like, God, that would have really that would have been the icing on the incest cake. Right?
I mean, here's my problem with
hard to
any
buy those at
deviation
a
from the
bakery.
books. It's also just reads like this cheap narrative shortcut to set up any future conflicts between Jaime and Cersei. Like, there are conflicts between Jaime and Cersei, but for much more complicated reasons than you raped me.
See, I completely disagree with that, though.
I think that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of it.
disagree with that, though, because I think that they already created that falling out in the previous episodes where
when
he
she
came back
refused him.
and she refused it.
Right.
That they already created the I hate you relationship.
Isn't it more of a shorthand that the Lannisters are their own worst enemy?
Yes.
Yeah, well, okay. The other major change from the book is the timeline. Like, in the book, that is the first time Jaime and Cersei have seen each other since he had his whole little adventure with Brienne, which I think also puts it into a different relationship. Like, in the show, it plays as you've been rejecting me for weeks, I'm going to take it now.
Yes.
In the books, it was, I haven't seen you for 3 months. I am horny and emotional.
They did a really good job establishing the fact that like they're not getting back together anytime soon, and that there was tension there, and that they both changed so much. They did such a good job establishing all of that made the rape seem that much more gratuitous and sort of like some weird device that we're like, oh, it would be like it felt like shock for shock's sake is what it felt like to
The
me.
fact that she'd been rejecting him for weeks just makes it feel I know that it's a fantasy world, but this makes it feel like something that could happen in the real world and does happen in the real world, where a girlfriend, has been sort of pushing her boyfriend away for weeks, and he comes back and rapes her. Like, that happens in the real world.
But that's the point. I mean, like, the point is that these characters are not supposed to. Jaime Lannister is not supposed to be this redemptive hero, and now is this like unimpeachable, like glorious hero person. Even though you felt bad for him because he had a bad childhood and it was hard for him.
You're making me like Jaime Lannister more.
I find rape a cheap shorthand for reminding you that this is a gray character. Like,
He's always been a up person. He's always been a horrible.
Is the actual debate that everyone feels cheated because it was a shorthand for making him bad when the show has dealt so well with gray areas, or is it because they just showed a rape on top of a son's dead body?
I think it's
and then it's just like, oh, that's too much weirdness, rape, incest on top of like your dead son.
The conversation has become about whether or not it was a rape because people still want that to be the issue. He raped her and it's f***ed up and it's wrong, but having consensual sex next to their dead son during her period after trying to kill a 9-year-old boy is still f***ed up.
It's all f***ed up and wrong. It's Game of Thrones.
yeah, my biggest single problem with this is that in the real world, outside of the real world of the show, producer went on record and said that wasn't rape.
That's
like
not okay.
that is real world f***ed up, and like
That is
I'm
real.
gonna go ahead and say like that's not okay, internet.
At the end of the day, like, and after the Red Wedding, and after everything that's like pregnant woman getting stabbed in the belly, and after everything that is, oh come on, you're that far behind?
He hasn't watched it at all.
Oh, okay. After all the disgusting things that have happened on this show, the scene, regardless of what the producers have said, just the scene in the context of the show is like the third most despicable person raping the second most despicable person next to the dead body of the first most despicable person. So it's like,
It's a great way to put it.
I'm not sure that it's as shocking as everybody really wants it to be, because like it's Game of Thrones. If shocking doesn't happen on an episode, I'm like, well, I just wasted an hour. Well, let us know what you guys think about all this stuff down in the comments below. Make sure to click like and subscribe, and come back next time for more movie news on CineFix Now. And now we mumble, and we get up, and we leave.
Watermelon.
Because there's another